Hey everyone, this is going to be a tutorial about motion track in After Effects. So this is what we're going to aim to do. This is my rather grotty garden shed. My wife will be appalled that I've shown you this. And basically what we're going to do is we've just tracked the words "my shed" onto the front of the shed, like that. And we're going to do that using the point tracker in After Effects. So we've got point tracker, we've got camera tracker, and we've got mocker, which is a planar tracker. So there are three different ways of tracking in After Effects. So let's see how we do this. Start a new composition. So we'll get the shed footage and we'll drag it onto create new composition. And then I'm just going to take the first, let's say, 200 frames. So move to 200, press N, and then Command-Shift-X to extend your work time to just that amount of frames. And then I am going to go to frame 0. I'm going to select my layer, right-click, track and stabilize, track motion. And you'll see what happens is it gives you a track point, but we need to track more than one point because we need to track more than one dimension. We want to track X, Y, and Z. So over here on the right hand side in my tracker window, if you can't see this tracker window, go to window and then click tracker and it'll appear. So over here on the window, I'm going to click rotation and scale. So now it's tracking the position, which is the X and Y, the rotation, which is the difference between the 2 points we now have vertically, and the scale, which is their distance from each other, which gives you the Z depth of the scene. And then we're going to go and we're just going to zoom in a little bit, and we're going to drag from inside this box, which will allow us to drag everything, and we're going to stick that over here on this little black screw in the side of the shed. Planar tracker tracks on a contrast basis, so you want to choose a dark area with lots of light area around it to give the tracker something to hold on to. And I'm going to put the other one on this side. You can change the outer box, which is the next frame region essentially. It tells the tracker where to look for the inner box in the next frame. We don't really need to change that because the footage itself doesn't jump around a lot, but if you had more jumpy footage you'd get a better track if you pulled this out quite wide, but that will slow you down because the computer will have to do more calculations. So for the moment let's just leave it close down here, and this is the actual region within which it looks for the track. So if we had a more complicated scene, we might make this bigger so it's looking for more of an area, but it should be fine looking for just this at the moment. And the point in the middle is the actual track point center that it's going to give us in data terms. So we've chosen one track point there and one track point on this side. Now we just need to track our scene. So over in the tracker panel we're going to press analyze forward, and we're just going to let it do its work. And you can see as it scans through, yours might not move as quickly as this, but that's fine. Just wait for it to finish. Hopefully it should track through the scene relatively well. And you can see it does jump a little bit. This tracker isn't fantastic. So you can see, like at the start it's in the middle of the dot on both sides, and at the end it's a bit lower down. That one's a bit further in. It's not a huge worry, but maybe if that happens, go back to the first frame, maybe choose like closer to where it finishes, perhaps on both sides, and give it another track, see if that holds better for virtue of being in that end position. Not bad. Jumps a little bit on this last section here. I imagine that's the camera judder. So when it gets to, if I scroll back, you can see once it gets to this point here, over here, that's quite a sharp jump back in the other direction. There's probably some motion blur at that point, and that might be why it ends up really low down on this screw at the end. Don't worry about it too much. It's closer than it was the first time. So now we've got our track. What we need to do is pin that track to something. So over here in the timeline, select, right click, select new, null object, and make sure you're on frame 0, edit target on the right, sorry, let me show that again. So over here in the tracker window, edit target, and then you want null 1, or null 3 as it was, on layer 1, and click OK. And that's going to tell the tracker to apply the tracking data we just made to that null object. So we click apply, and it'll ask you in this little window, which may pop up anywhere, apply dimensions X and Y, and click OK. I've no idea why it would ask you to apply anything else, but there you go. Apply dimensions X and Y. And you'll see on the null layer, we now have position, scale, and rotation for every frame. And if I just click the toggle mask and shape path visibility button so you can see the null object, you'll now see that it moves in relation to the track. Cool. So now we've got a tracked null. We can pin things to that null, and that will allow us to put things onto the shed however we like, basically. So let's choose the text tool at the top. Let's click somewhere between the 2 points we tracked, because the closer to that line we get, the better this effect will be. And then type whatever you like. So my shed, I've chosen a kind of woody, splintery, painty looking font, which is fine. And what I'm going to do is, just so that I've got more control if I want to change it later, I'm going to choose the pan behind tool from the toolbar at the top. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to take this anchor point here, this little red target kind of thing, and I'm going to try and place it in the middle of the scene, of the layer. So you see where the red dots are around it, that tells you where the vertical and horizontal centers are. So I'm going to try and just drop it somewhere there. It doesn't have to be exact, but that means if I scale it from now, it's not going to scale from the side, it's going to scale in and out from the middle, which is more easy to manipulate. So change back to your selection tool. Now you can move this around, get it where you want it. So maybe somewhere like that, my shed. And now what we want to do is we want to connect that shed text to the track that we did earlier. And we do that down in the timeline by, let's just put my shed over the footage. It doesn't have to be, but it's just easier organization that way. So let's select my shed on frame 0, and then let's choose this little icon here, the parent pick whip, and we're going to pick whip it to, so drag it over the name of null 3, that null layer that has all our tracking data on, and let go. You can hide the null area. Now, if we're lucky, this layer should move according to these keyframes. So if we press play, I'm just going to take the volume down. Should have done that earlier. So press play again, and you can see that the My Shed bit sticks pretty convincingly to the door of the shed. Like so. And then, like we've done for other tutorials, we could integrate it a little better. So maybe we will blur it out a little bit. Tiny bit of blur. Like that. and maybe we will try and get the color a bit closer. So let's choose that's a bit dark. Maybe we can just orange that up, bring it up a bit. Something like that. It needs to be darker, doesn't it? It's tricky, it's not the colour I actually like. Maybe that's too orange. That's a bit better. And then maybe we could put the motion blur on, so that as it moves it actually blurs like the rest of the scene would. And let's go back out a bit. And there you go. Now you could even, if you were being really good, you could scroll in a little bit and realise that there is actually some texture in the shed itself. And if this was painted over, it would probably bring some of that through. So what we might like to do is, instead of applying this as a solid layer, if we go down here in the timeline to the toggle switches and modes button and press it, you'll bring up the modes for the transfer layers and mattes. So we might choose overlay, and that's vanished because of the color it is, so don't worry about that. We're going to change that to I shouldn't really have multiply. Okay, we'll put it multiply. This might be counterintuitive, counterproductive, because the level to which that's going to shine through, that texture in this resolution is probably minor. But if it was really clear resolution, it might work better. So maybe let's just really contrast this to show you. So if I change the shed contrast, and tick that down, so now you can see the shed is actually affecting the if we just turn that back to normal, see there's no crossing of the boundary so much, and when we turn it on to multiply we get some little bits of shed texture come through. So maybe on a more textured wood you might think about using an opacity, a transfer layer like multiply or overlay, which would give you a little bit more integration into the door. We kind of get away with it because our shed itself is so bright that you can't really even see it. So there you go. That is how to use 2D point tracking. It works best on flat surfaces, and it works best with contrasted areas. So we chose the 2 black screws because they were the most contrasted, solid, unmoving areas in that area that we wanted to stick the my shed bit. And there you go. So have a go, and I'll see how you do. All right, cheers.